Topic 9.6. Objective. I have learned how to find the multiples shared by two different numbers. Today I will find common denominators for pairs of fractions with different denominators. Pause the video now and write this in your math spiral. Connect to what you know. Write how you can find a common multiple for 9 and 12 in your math journal. Hint: if you need to start with 0 on each of them. So for example, for 9 you'd do 9 times 0, 1 times 9, 2 times 9, 3 times 9, and so on. For 12, you start with 0 times 12, 1 times 12, 2 times 12, and so on. Make a list. Pause the video now and to do this in your math spiral. Pose the problem. Sue wants 1/4 of a pan of cornbread. Deja wants 1/3 of the same pan of cornbread. How should you cut the cornbread so that it is easy for each to get the size piece she wants? Well, the first thing you do is you're going to do one vertically and one horizontal so that when you put them together, you'll have boxes. So go ahead and do this in your math spiral now. What relationship do you see between the size of the pieces you cut the cornbread into and the size of the pieces that the girl wants? For example, first Sue was going to get just like this, and Deja was going to get one of these. Okay, well, then we divided it by thirds and fourths together on here, 1, 2, and 3, and then this goes to fourths, 1, 2, 3, 4. So altogether you have 12. So I took 1/4 and I knew that my denominator was 12, so I said 4 times what gives me 12? Well, it was 3, so since I multiplied my denominator by 3, I multiplied my numerator by 3. Did the same thing here for Deja. She wanted 1/3. I knew it was 12 pieces I ended up with, so 3 times what gives me 12? Well, it was 4, so my denominator was 4, so I must multiply my numerator by 4 also. Okay, altogether they used 7/12. Okay, and I would shade in 3/12 for Sue and 4/12 for Deja. Do this now in your math spiral. Does yours look like mine? It doesn't need to be identical as long as Sue has 3 pieces and Deja has 4. Then you've done it right. Now, I want you to try. Sue wants 1/2 of a pan of cornbread. Deja wants 1/3 of the same pan of cornbread. How should you cut the cornbread so that it is easy for each to get the size piece she wants? Remember, one goes vertical, up and down, while the other one goes horizontal, so that when you match them up together on the final one, you have squares. Do this now in your math spiral. Pause the video. Okay, Sue had a half, so I went ahead and chose to go horizontal with Sue, so I went vertically with Deja, and she had thirds. She just wanted 1/3 though. Then I put it on the last square where I have my half, and then I have my thirds going this way, which turned it into 6 squares. So if Sue gets 1/2, she gets 3/6. So right here, this would be Sue's, and Deja would get 2/6. And Deja has 1/3, which is 2/6. Then I checked it again. I put 1/2. I knew I divided my boxes into 6, so I put 6. So then I said 2 times what gives me 6, and it was 3. So my denominator was 3, so I had to put my numerator as 3. Then I worked it out. Same thing here. I knew that Deja wanted 1/3, so I put 1/3 here, and I knew the boxes were 6, so I multiplied my denominator, okay, as 2, and it worked. So I made my numerator 2. So altogether, there should be 5/6 that are shaded in. If you don't have this, go ahead and stop the video now and make it so. Okay, last pan of cornbread, I promise. Sue wants 1/4 of a pan of cornbread. Deja wants 1/5 of the same pan of cornbread. How should you cut the cornbread so that it's easy for each to get the size piece she wants? Remember, one goes vertical, up and down, one goes horizontal, so that when you put them together, you have little boxes. Do this now in your math journal. Okay, so Sue wanted 1/4, so we have 4 pieces here, and Deja wanted 5ths. So here we have 5ths. So you put them together. The 5ths go this way, the 4ths go this way. So there's 4 across and 5 down, so there's 20 boxes all together. So I put 1/4. Okay, I put the 20 here, and I went 4 times what gives me 20, and I knew it was 5. So 5 is my denominator, so I made 5 my numerator. So 5/20ths is what Sue gets, and Deja gets 4/20ths, because I know you can see that I put 1/5 here, then I said 20 that I knew of. 5 times what gives me 20? The answer was 4, which is now my denominator, so I make my numerator the same number, which is 4. So I have 4/20ths plus 5/20ths, and we have 9 altogether. Now go ahead and mark in these boxes, if you haven't already, how much Deja gets and how much Sue gets. Do this now in your math spiral. Pause the video now. So Sue gets 1/4, which is 5/20ths, right here, and Deja gets 1/5, which is 4/20ths. So altogether you have 9/20ths shaded in. Go to the next problem. First, I have a question. Academic vocabulary. How is finding a common denominator for two fractions related to finding common multiples for two numbers? For example, 5/6 and 3/4. Find a common denominator for the pair of fractions. It doesn't have to be the least, but it helps. Write your answer in your math spiral now. Pause the video. As you can see, I've listed the common multiples out for 6 and 4. Then I go and I find common denominators, which would be what they have in common. Underline these in your spiral or circle them, what they have in common. Pause the video now to do so. Do you have the same answers as me? Why do you think I circled the 12? Yes, that's right. It's the least common multiple because it's the least number they have in common except for 0, and you can't count 0 because that's in every number. If you don't have this, go ahead and put this in your math spiral and pause the video. If you do, continue. Okay, since I saw that 12 was the least common multiple, I went ahead and used it for right down here as my denominator. Now it's called my least common denominator. So I put 12 here, and I knew I wanted 5/6 is what I had. So 6 times what gives me 12? So I found that answer was 2. So if my denominator is 2, my numerator is 2. Same thing here. I had 3/4, and I knew that my denominator was 12, my least common denominator. So I put 12 here. 4 times what gives me 12? Well, that answers 3. So if I have 3 for my denominator, I have 3 for my numerator. Go ahead and write this down in your math journal. Pause the video now. Write the common denominator for 2/3 and 3/4 in your math spiral. Explain why your denominator is correct in your math spiral. It doesn't have to be the least, but it's much easier when it is, so you don't have to divide it down. So write out your multiples for 3 and 4 at this time. Pause the video now. Is this what you got? Of course, we don't have to stop at the exact same place as I do. Now, looking over this, I see that they have 0 in common, and the next closest one they have in common looks like 12. So I think I will go ahead and put the least common denominator, it will be, down. so that I can work this problem. I'll put 2/3, and 3 will be across from 12, and 3/4, and the 4 will be across from the 12. Do this now in your math spiral. Is this what you got? You put your 2/3, your 3, your denominator, across from the 12. Then you put your 4 across from the 12. And 4 times what gives me 12? That answer would be 3. So my denominator is 3 and my numerator is 3. 3 times what gives me 12? The answer is 4. So 4 is my denominator and as well as my numerator. Now I have common denominators and I can work with these fractions. Pause the video now. If you don't have this written out, if you have it written out, continue. Write the common denominator for 1/3 and 5/6 in your math spiral. Explain why your denominator is correct in your math spiral. Remember, list out the multiples and then find the least is the easiest thing to do so that you don't have to reduce it later. Pause the video now and write it. As you can see, I wrote out my multiples for 3 and 6. They have 0 in common, and the next one they have in common is 6. So 6 is the best answer, but you can use any of those fractions and divide further down. So I put 6 across from 1/3 by the denominator. 3 times what gives me 6? It was 2. So since I multiplied my denominator by 2, multiplied my numerator by 2. The other one already had a denominator of 6, so I just left it alone. You don't always have to change both. If you don't have this, write this down now. Okay, last one. Write the common denominator for 3/5 and 1/4 in your math spiral. And explain why the denominator is correct in your math spiral. Try to make it your least common denominator. Pause the video now to do so. Okay, I wrote out my multiples for 5 and 4. Of course, 0 they have in common, and then the next one they have in common is, wow, 20. So, had to go pretty far. So 20 is the best, and then, of course, 40, 60, and 80, if you went that far. So I wrote 20 down across from the denominator of 5 and 3/5, and across from the denominator in 1/4. Okay, so I say 5 times what gives me 20. The answer is 4, so my denominator is multiplied by 4, and so is my numerator. Then I did the same thing here. 4 times what gives me 20? Well, the answer is 5. So 5 is what I multiplied my denominator by and my numerator, because you always have to do the same. If you don't have this written down, please write it down now. I hope you already had it because you knew what to do. Time for your self-assessment. How do you feel about today's lesson? Do you really get it? Or do you need just a little more help? Please take the self-assessment now.